Source, this segment brought to you by Southeast Termite and Pest Control. You hear it on the news, Zika virus. You know that the Zika virus is carried by mosquitoes. So what do you do down south where the mosquitoes are all over the place? You call Southeast Termite and Pest Control to schedule mosquito treatments. One time, monthly, whatever schedule you need. Get rid of the mosquitoes that carry Zika virus, Southeast Termite and Pest Control. All right. I said that kind of upbeat for Zika virus. Hey, Zika virus. All right.
Sounds fun.
We do have a game show segment coming up later. I think I got ahead of myself there. All right. Butch Jones spoke at Media Days this week, and he broke out many of his usual cliches. People call them Butchisms. He did step on the one-third rail that I hate. He mentioned the game of life. That whenever somebody says game of life, I have to walk into the back and hurl. But what I thought was interesting is there's a group on social media of Tennessee fans who, when he's asked about winning championships, he'll dodge it and say, well, nothing's bigger than the pressure we put on ourselves and that kind of stuff. Ticks them off. I mean, we've talked about this a little bit before, that bothers them. Come out and say we're going to be champions, and that's what we're about. And people want him to talk a little bit more. It's clear that's not him. He's a cliche guy, and he's not going to give you much. One person this week said, well, this hurts him and the program. Okay, I'm putting it to you. I don't see that. I don't see how he's hurt by being a guy who dances around questions. Now, if we're the ones asking the questions, media, you want a real answer. So I get that. But I don't see how that hurts him in the long run. I mean, all these coaches do it differently. You get some guys that are jerks. You got some guys who are funny. You got some guys who just dance around it. Lou Holtz made a career out of poor-mouthing his teams. Thoughts on Butch Jones and the fact that he doesn't give the media and fans what they want in a press conference?
I will give you a quote from the Bill Murray movie Meatballs, which dates myself.
Yes.
It just doesn't matter.
Just doesn't matter.
Yeah, I mean, and it doesn't. He can sit there and you go and you look at great coaches. They all have a different style, or a lot of them have a different style. If Butch Jones wins the East, wins the SEC championship, he can sit there and every answer can be we're putting our nose to the grindstone because our backs are against the wall and everybody will be happy. He doesn't win the East, he can come out with the best prose and poetry ever said by man, and it isn't going to matter. It just doesn't matter.
That's great. Derek Dooley is the perfect example.
Yes.
I mean, Derek Dooley, his press conferences, waiting for the what was it that had to grow?
Rommel.
The bamboo that had to grow, all that stuff. Those were great. You couldn't win games. So to me, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, Derek Dooley was bizarro Butch when it came to the press conference. And it really didn't matter. All that matters is winning and losing. You can come across like a jerk. You can come across as very boring. You can come across as very goofy. And at the end of the day, all that matters is how many games do you win? Do you win any championships? If Tennessee goes 11-1, if they're playing in Atlanta, playing for the SEC title, I don't think too many fans are going to complain about how boring he was in July.
Yeah. Well, I don't think he's trying to obfuscate or dodge anything. I just think that's who he is, and I don't think that it would be any different after a big win. If Tennessee wins the SEC championship game, I don't think he's going to be up there giving a bunch of colorful quotes. I think that's just, he's got a tunnel vision mind, and like many coaches, that's just who he is.
Well, and I thought when he was first hired, you listened to him and you said, this guy's a football coach. And I don't mean this as a knock, but there's like Nick Saban. You could take Nick Saban and put him at the top of a Fortune 500 company. Now, you'd probably get mad when you interviewed him, but this is a guy that could just do anything. He goes off on tangents. Really, his mind is it just seems expansive. Butch is a football coach.
Yeah.
His answers are football coach answers. And again, I don't mean that as a knock. It's just I think that's who he is. I don't think he's one of these. He's not going to be a guy that goes off like Les Miles on different parts of life. It's always going to be the, we're looking for the 25, and it's 3/16/84, which means this. It's all these codes and numbers. One thing I thought was interesting is his team is a reflection of him. They are the no soundbite squad, which, again, there are people like, well, that shows fear. Somebody earlier in the Knoxville Media wrote on a website earlier that you need to trash talk with Florida. It shows you're scared if you don't. I disagree. Tim Duncan had a pretty good career, and you never heard a word out of him. He was one of the best 10 basketball players ever. There are plenty of coaches and teams that don't talk. They just go out and kick your butt. So I don't have a problem. To be honest, I kind of like that because it's a change of pace. if you go out and kick somebody's butt.
Yeah, I talked to Cam Sutton and Jalen Reeves-Maven about Florida. A lot of people did this week, and I didn't sense any fear. I sensed that they're very anxious to answer on September 24th.
Jalen Tabor's mouth.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And if players weren't buying in on the message of Butch Jones, that's when maybe you would worry about the cliches if they're tired of it. If they had lost that Georgia game last year, maybe they wouldn't be buying in, but they came back, they won the game. And I think players believe in what Butch is telling them.
But let's be honest, if they lose to Florida again, some fans are going to point to that kind of stuff.
But I think that's why it comes back to, do you win the games, do you lose the games?
Right. And I think what this says is that there are still some unanswered questions about Butch Jones in terms of how the height that he can bring this program. So because it's there and that's an easy target, I think fans can point to that stuff right now. And Jim McElwain's another example that you can do it in a lot of different ways. Jim McElwain will charm you and say some funny things and have a different style, but he also doesn't say anything. It's just Butch's personality and the way he delivers. It doesn't mean anything.
Yeah. And I also think there's a group, and this is true, any coach that's hired anywhere now, because now everyone has a voice. It used to be, the guy would grumble at the barber shop, everybody would roll their eyes, and that was it. Now the guy at the barbershop can reach out and tell 100,000 of his friends on Twitter, and people agree with it. But I think whoever you hire as a coach, there are going to be fans that don't buy in. I didn't want this guy, therefore I said I didn't want this guy, so I have to, from now on, be against this guy.
Justified.
So I think there are still people that didn't want, but I think the people that complain the most about the Butchisms are the people that didn't want Butch Jones hired in the first place.
Agreed.
Because that's a pretty small thing to be targeting as a major problem, is his cliches. But anyway, all right. When we come back, we didn't get a chance to talk about it last week. We've talked about it for months. Tennessee's Title IX lawsuit was settled, as I told you it would be. We will show you our last 4 months of coverage in a little 5-minute deal. It's interesting to see just how right we were. We got plenty of football coming up as well. Come on back on the Sports Source.